going on, everybody?
Hi, guys. I'm Melissa,
And I'm Matt,
and we are.
two English teachers stuck in a house.
So, today we want to talk about Shakespeare. We're actually going to go through Romeo and Juliet with you guys. And wouldn't you say a lot of people are freaked out about Shakespeare?
They are. They're always screaming out when we say we're going to read Romeo and Juliet, but they end up liking it. Most people.
Shakespeare's actually really fun. I remember when I was in school and we did Shakespeare, it was like our teacher thought that we weren't going to pick up on any of the dirty jokes, and everybody went around the room popcorn reading, and it was pretty miserable. I remember feeling like
I've never done popcorn in 25 years of teaching.
I haven't either, because I remember hearing all the names and hearing these terrible readers, no fault of their own, have to read these words they've never read before, and it just made the whole thing awful. So I guess I really didn't start appreciating Shakespeare till I took a Shakespeare class in college, and my professor was amazing, and so I finally read it right, and it was awesome.
Awesome.
So one of the first things I teach my kids is you have to know a little grammar to be able to read Shakespeare. I don't ask them to understand everything or know all the little parts. I tell them that if you can just know the subject and the verb between ending punctuation, that you will be able to understand what's happening and who's doing it. And then as your teacher, I'll fill in the rest. What do you tell them?
I start with talking about Shakespeare to get introduced to him a little bit. I know we have time to do that, and we have all the time in the world, I guess.
Yes, we do. So Shakespeare, there's not very much known about him. We know when he was born,
When he was married,
that he had kids,
and that he died.
and then he died. There are a lot of different theories out there about was Shakespeare real and did he write everything.
Doesn't really matter because somebody wrote this amazing stuff, so we call him Shakespeare.
Yeah. I remember when I was in school, they taught us about all the syllables and the accents and all that stuff. None of that really matters because Shakespeare wasn't written to be read with your eyeballs. But that's how we have to teach it. So we are going to be sharing with you some strategies for how to read it. We're going to stop and pause and talk about things. There are obviously some really good versions of Romeo and Juliet out there. I personally like the Leonardo DiCaprio one.
We're kind of the perfect match for Shakespeare because he wrote for two different types of people. The groundlings who stood in front and were eating their turkey bones and drinking their beer. I'm the groundling.
The bottom line is people stop reading to kids. And as a teacher, I've always wanted to read to kids. Like, I read everything out loud to them, and they love it. So when you read something the way it's supposed to be read, then you get kids hooked.
One of the basic things that Shakespeare uses is puns, and he uses it's they're words with double meanings or phrases with double meanings, and so the I don't know, the people who like crude jokes will understand it, but also the uppity queen and all of the higher class people will understand it. So, and also I like to tell them about the cadence. We'll do a day on iambic pentameter. So Shakespeare uses, I don't know what the percentage is. I used to know 94% of his lines are have 10 syllables per line. It's pretty shocking when you look at it.
Do you know why I did that?
No.
So Shakespeare had a troupe of about 15 actors, and Shakespeare could turn out plays in 3 to 4 days. And so what they would be doing is they'd be on stage performing one play, going home at night, learning the lines for the next play. And so iambic pentameter is a natural way of speaking. And it's almost like when you can learn a rhyme or a poem, like kids learn their ABCs, not because they know the letters, but because of the rhythm of the words. And so he wrote that way to make it easier for people to memorize.
So instead of reading it straight across, and well, you know, your natural cadence of your voice will come out, but just a basic line, you could read it, but soft what light through yonder window breaks. But if you read it with iambic pentameter, it's but soft what light through yonder window breaks. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun.
So yes, we won't read it like that either. Don't worry. And one of the things we suggest is that you get a copy of Romeo and Juliet, and there are several versions. I like the Oxford School Shakespeare version. It has a lot of side notes, it has some pictures, it has definitions for you. But the biggest thing is read along while we're reading, and so that you can write down notes as you hear what we have to say. The other thing I tell kids is that you use punctuation, you don't use the end of a line. That's weird. So you're going to read it and you're going to pause when there's a period or a comma or a semicolon and all that stuff. And if you guys have questions, we'll post a link for you to email questions to us. And for those real nerds, I will have links to questions that you can sit and discuss with people as you're watching. And we really hope you enjoy it. So right now we are going to start.
We're in Verona, Italy, in the 1500s, and kids were the same then. So we're starting off with a bunch of teenagers on the street, and I always tell my kids that teenage boys like talking about two things. A little secret for girls, teenage girls. Two things the teenage boys like talking about are girls and making fun of each other. Boys love making fun of each other and talking about girls. So that's what these guys are doing in the beginning.
Right before the beginning, though, remember those groundlings that they said were on the front eating their turkey bones and hanging out and stuff like that? Well, Shakespeare knew that people needed to be reminded of what's going on, or they needed a little preview, so he starts the whole play with what's called the prologue, and it actually tells you everything that's going to happen. So one of the questions I get asked, though, before we get going is, if we already know they die in the end, who cares? Well, literature isn't about the beginnings and the endings, it's about the story. One of my favorite lines from a movie is from Anne and the King, and it's roads are for journeys, not destinations. And so even though I've taught this probably 35, 40 times, and even though kids know how it's going to end at the end, right at the end, they're like, no, I can't believe it, I'm so angry. And so they beg Romeo or Juliet not to do what they're about to do. So we hope that you guys get as involved in this and appreciate the journey as much as we do.
So we haven't picked parts or anything yet, but sure, Melissa's going to start with the. Should we do how to pronounce names?
We will when we get there.
We will when we get there. So this is probably, maybe we'll put an insert of the words as we're reading, so you know what parts we're reading. But the stage opens and one person comes out, and he is the chorus. Chorus.
Thank you. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers takes their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. Want to talk about that?
So two households, two different families, both alike in dignity. We're in Italy. I like to think of them as two very powerful, I don't know, mafia-type families, and they've been fighting for the same piece of ground, scrapping for the same dollar for nobody knows how long. It's an ancient mutiny. And from the hands, these two foes, these two star-crossed lovers, take their own life. So we know right from the beginning that these two star-crossed lovers are going to take their life.
Well, the one thing I want to add, though, is that they break to a new mutiny, which means a new disagreement from an ancient grudge. So, like, this is because of some old issue these families have had for years, and something happens, and they decide they are going to, they don't decide, they start to fight. And so civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So basically what that's saying is that normal people get involved in this thing where there's blood that's spilled, and they're star-crossed lovers. So star-crossed means ill-fated. And that's one of the things that Shakespeare really likes to get into, is the role of fate versus flaw, meaning, is it human choice that leads to the downfall of people, or is it because something was written in the stars a long time ago? But it says, whose misadventured, piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. That means that with these two lovers' deaths, the family, the ancient grudge, is finally put to death as well. Going on line 9. The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which, but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. To which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. Okay, so like we said, we are starting in the opening scene is what?
In Verona, on the streets, and the servants are out in the streets and about to get into a little brawl.
Okay. And they are making jokes with each other. And here we go.
Enter Samson and Gregory with swords and bucklers of the house of Capulet. Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals.
No, for then we should be colliers.
I mean, and we being collar will draw.
Aye, while you live, draw your neck out of collar.
I strike quickly, being moved.
But thou art not quickly moved to strike.
A dog of the house of Montague moves me.
To move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runnest away.
A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I'll take the wall of any man or maid of Montague's.
That shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall.
'Tis true, and therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore I will push Montague's men from the wall, and thrust his maids to the wall.
The quarrel is between our masters and us their men.
'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be civil. With the maids, I'll cut off their heads.
The heads of the maids?
Aye, the heads of the maids, or their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt.
They must take it in sense that feel it.
Me they shall feel while I'm able to stand, and 'tis known I'm a pretty piece of flesh.
'Tis well thou art not a fish. If thou hadst, thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool. Here comes the house of the Montagues. So let's talk about what we just read. Do you know why it was safer to walk towards the wall than out in the streets?
I think you said something about a privy pot or something like that.
So basically what happens is that people go to the bathroom in a privy pot or a chamber pot, and every morning the chambermaids come in and they throw the stuff in the pot out the window. And so if you didn't want to get sloshed with all their feces, then you walk towards the wall. So the higher ranking citizen or women would walk to the wall. But because we've been teaching high school for so long, you know what that means. The word thrust. What do little boys think about when they hear that? Or ninth grade boys.
Thrusting, yep.
Yep. So this is where those puns we mentioned started. And again, the groundlings on the ground floor, they want to hear funny stuff. They want to get involved. And so these jokes about thrusting the maids of the Montagues to the wall is not about being polite to them. We all know what a maidenhead is. It's their virginity. And
cut off their heads.
Cut off their heads.
They couldn't say that more poetic.
Yes.
Cut off their heads.
So moving on, then they start with all the sexual jokes. Like Samson says that they'll take me if they can feel me, and Gregory's like, oh, they will feel you. And then Gregory also says, good thing you aren't a fish, because fish flop.
And tools used in two ways: your actual sword and your man tool.
Your man tool. All right. So Samson keeps going.
Enter two other serving men, Abram and Balthazar. My naked weapon is out. Quarrel. I will back thee.
How? Turn thy back and run?
Fear me not.
No, Mary, I fear thee.
Let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin.
I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they list.
Nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them. Which is a disgrace to them if they bear it.
So I'm switching over to Abram. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
I do bite my thumb, sir.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
So this is an aside. An aside is when, in theater, when two people are talking and the rest of the cast can't hear, but the audience can hear. So they're telling secrets. Is the law of our side if I say I? No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir.
Do you quarrel, sir?
Quarrel, sir? No, sir.
But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you.
No better?
Well, sir.
Enter Benvolio. He's...
Go ahead.
He's, of the Montagues. He's Romeo's cousin, he's Lord Capulet's nephew, and he's pretty high ranking, even though he's still a teenager.
And Benvolio's name it comes from Latin for good voice or goodwill.
He tells the truth.
So Shakespeare likes to characterize people based on their opening first lines. You usually see their dominant character trait come out when they speak their first words. So pay attention to Benvolio's first words if you're reading along. But before Benvolio actually says something, Gregory and Samson and Abram continue. Say better, here comes one of my master's kinsmen.
Yes, better, sir.
You lie.
Draw if you be men. Gregory, remember thy swashing blow. They fight.
Part fools, put up your swords. You know not what you do.
Enter Tybalt. He is on the same level as Benvolio, but on the Capulet side, and he's a fighter.
What, art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death.
I do but keep the peace, put up thy sword, and manage it to part these men with me.
What, drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues in thee. Have at thee, coward. They fight.
Yes, and then all together, everybody from the town, the officers, citizens, everybody comes in, and they are yelling, clubs, bills, and partisan strike, beat them down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues, and this is important because it just shows that the status of Verona is pretty fed up with what's been going on. They all want this to stop. They don't care who wins. They want them both to just stop fighting. So then we have Capulet and Lady Capulet, Montague and Lady Montague come in. Capulet is Juliet's father. Lady Capulet is her mother. Montague is Romeo's dad, and Lady Montague is Romeo's mom.
What noise is this? Give me my long sword, oh!
A crutch, why call you for a sword?
My sword, I say. Old Montague has come and flourishes his blade in spite of me.
So basically, this is one of those moments we have to remember back to what a sword is. It's not just a tool, but it's a tool. And when Lord Capulet says, give me my long sword, he's trying to assert his manhood here, but his wife very quickly says...
Cuts him down.
Yeah, she's like, you need a crutch because your sword can't stand on its own.
Thou villain Capulet, hold me not. Let me go.
Thou shalt not stir 1 foot to seek a foe.
And here comes the prince. The Prince Aeschylus is he's the ruler of the entire Verona, and he has authority over even the Capulets and Montagues. Comes Prince Aeschylus.
Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor's sainted seal. Will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture from these bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word, by thee, old Capulet, and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans and hands of old, cankered with peace to part your cankered hate. If you ever disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon to know our farther pleasure in this case, to old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart.
So the princes had it. They fought 3 times. Bred of an airy word.
Yeah, so this ancient grudge is not based on something big, like somebody murdered somebody or somebody like took somebody's position of power. An airy word is like calling somebody a poopy head. We have a 3.5-year-old, almost 4, and then an 8-year-old, and they can be playing totally wonderfully, and then Judah will be like, you're a butt cheek, Eli, and all of a sudden everything is falling apart, and there's no longer peace and harmony in all the world, and they decide that they are going to fight to the death.
Peppa Pig reference.
That's a Peppa Pig reference. So, with all that being said, this is bred of an area where to breed something means to give birth to it, or to create it. So they're fighting because of some poopy head comment that one of them said to the other, and their pride has been hurt. They want to, again, assert their manhood. So that's what this whole thing is about, and the prince is like, I'm done. If you do it again, you're going to die. That's it. So that kind of warning is hanging in the air. Keep that in mind as we keep reading, that if they fight again in the streets, Capulets versus Montagues, somebody's dying. That's it.
So everybody exits except for Montague, Lady Montague, and Benvolio. Who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew, were you by when it began?
Here were the servants of your adversary and yours, close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared, which, as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung up at his head and cut the winds. Who nothing hurt withal hissed him in scorn. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more and more, and fought on part and part, till the prince came, who parted either part. Oh, where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray. Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drive me walk abroad, where underneath a grove of sycamores that westward rooteth from the city side, so early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole to the covert of the wood, I, measuring his affections by mine own, which then most sought where most might not be found, being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned, who gladly fled from me.
Nobody wants to hear their cousin or their, well, boys, want to hear their cousin or their friend say, like, I'm so sad. Please talk to me. So Benvolio's like, I'm out of here. I saw him, but I left. Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs. But also soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and portentous must his humor prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove.
My noble uncle, do you know the cause?
I neither know it, nor can learn of him.
Have you importuned him? By any means?
Both by myself and many other friends, but he, his own affection's counselor, is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the sun. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would as willingly give cure as know.
See where he comes, so please you step aside, I'll know his grievance or be much denied.
I would thou wert so happy by thy stay to hear true shrift. Come, madam, let's away.
So, describe Romeo in a nutshell, the way his father does.
He's emo. He's over sensationalizing love. He's so sad.
And I always point out to my students that it's really interesting that Lord Montague's the one who describes Romeo's behavior, because you would think it'd be the mom who would. So, but he also gives another warning. So in 2 pages worth of reading, we've had 2 warnings. And the first warning was that if anybody fights again, they'll die. And the second warning that Lord Montague gives, even though it's not a warning, it's an observation, is he's like, you know what, if we don't figure out what's going on with Romeo, this is going to lead to something very, very bad. He's being a teenager who wants to shut himself in his room and draw his curtains. I always give my husband a hard time. Back when he was a lovesick teenager, he would turn Journey on, play on the record player in his
Beautiful.
Walkman, and burn incense and like cry over women that he hadn't even loved and lost yet. So I always picture a sad Romeo. If he could have been listening to Journey right now, he would have been. Anyway, so Romeo walks up and remember what I said about first impressions with their words, okay? So, or their opening line. So Benvolio says, "Good morrow, cousin."
No, you see where he comes. Did we do that?
Yep.
Oh, good one. Is the day so young?
But news struck 9.
Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?
It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?
Not having that which having makes them short.
In love.
Out.
Of love?
Out of her favor where I am in love.
Alas, that love, so gentle in his view, should be so tyrannous and rough in proof.
Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I've heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first created? O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep. That is not what it is. This love feel I, that feel no love in this? Dost thou not laugh?
No, 'cause I rather weep.
Good heart at what?
At thy heart's good oppression. Good heart's oppression, sorry.
Why, such is love's transgression. Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have it pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke made with the fume of sighs, being purged, a fire sparkling in lovers' eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with loving tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, a preserving sweet. Farewell, my coz.
Soft. I will go along, and if you leave me so, you do me wrong.
Tut! I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He's some other where.
Tell me in sadness, who is it that you love?
What, shall I groan and tell thee?
Grown? I know, but sadly, tell me who.
Bid a sick man in sadness make his will. Word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman.
I aimed so near when I supposed you loved.
A right good markman, and she's fair I love.
Right fair mark fair, 'cause as soonest hits.
Well, in that hit you miss, she'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Diane's wit. And in strong proof of chastity, well armed from love's weak childish bow, she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saint-seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor that when she dies, with beauty dies her store.
So after that whole thing, Romeo is spilling his guts out. He's like, oh, she doesn't love me back. I love her.
But his real problem is she will not ope her lap to his saint-seducing gold.
Like, ope her lap. And Benvolio's response is, then she hath sworn she will live chaste.
She hath, and in that sparing make huge waste. For beauty starveth her severity, cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair, to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now.
Be ruled by me. Forget to think of her.
Oh, teach me how I should forget to think.
By giving liberty unto thine eyes, examine other beauties.
'Tis the way to call hers exquisite and question more. These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows, being black, puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair. What doth her beauty serve but as a note, where I may read who passed that passing fair? Farewell, farewell. Thou canst not teach me to forget.
I'll pay that doctrine, or else die in debt.
Bet. Benvolio's like, I bet. I'll find you a girl. I'll find you somebody.
So, Romeo and Benvolio are pretty close, because it doesn't take much prodding for Romeo to tell Benvolio what's going on, and, Lord Montague had asked Romeo before. Benvolio's not really taking it very seriously that Romeo's feeling this way.
Pretty sure he's heard this before.
Right. So what was Romeo's opening line?
What time is it? That news struck.
Well, his first major line, he says, is the day so young? Like, his whole perspective on everything is like, oh, this is terrible. This day seems like it's already gone on forever, and it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. So another thing that Shakespeare...